Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Rohn at the statewide news service and jbiztechvalley.com. We have a very, very special guest with us all the way from New York City, and that is Assemblyman Phillip Goldfeder. Can I call you Phil, or is
Phil
that too in front?
Phil,
welcome to the Jewish View.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up all the way from Queens, to Assemblyman from Queens, but I guess Albany's your second home anyway, because this is the capital.
Much to the dismay of my wife.
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? You're young, you're 20-something?
32.
Oh,
32. I still
okay.
like pretend that I'm in my 20s. I guess every politician wishes they could stay
I'm
young.
a rabbi and I say I'm 29, so in the rabbi school. So.
I was born and raised in Rockaway, and have been interested in public service probably since I graduated college. Started my career in the New York City Council, working for a city councilman, or naturally progressed through the ranks, working for Mike Bloomberg on his re-election campaign in 2005, working in the city administration, and then working for Senator Charles Schumer in 2008 and 2009. And then proudly elected to the New York State Assembly in 2011.
Well, but there's something in between that. You were chief of staff to the previous Assemblywoman.
No, I interned for her a little bit.
You
I didn't work for her, but I interned for her. I mean, she was my political mentor. Growing up in
that was Audrey Pfeffer.
Audrey Pfeffer was my predecessor. Growing up in Far Rockaway, Audrey Pfeffer was, didn't matter who the president was, it didn't matter who the mayor was, as long as you knew who Audrey Pfeffer were, you were taken care of. So
well, her predecessor, Gertie Lipschitz, was even more of a presence. I got to tell you, she was over the top with especially with casino gambling.
Yeah,
that was her big issue. And I remember I was there for the vote when it was like 1 or 2 votes fell short in the Assembly. Senate had passed the second time, passed the amendment, and the Assembly had fell 1 or 2 votes short, and there was a gasp in the Assembly for that. But that was her big thing.
Well, I guess I get my knack for the gambling and casino from her. It's funny, I didn't realize.
Yeah. So you have you grew up there. You met your wife in Queens?
I met my wife in Queens, and we settled right away in Far Rockaway. I was born and raised in Rockaway, and then I chose the same neighborhood that I grew up to raise my children in and to raise my family in, because it was a great community growing up and had so many great qualities, and I thought it was the right place, sort of the right atmosphere where I can raise my kids and be sure that they had all the benefits that exist in New York City. And so far, I have 2 children. My daughter Eliana is 5, and my son Usher is going to be turning 4. And thank God, no complaints. The representation, they say, is a little bit lacking in the Assembly, but other than that, the community is doing very well.
Well, I'm sure you're ubiquitous around the district as well. I'm sure you're doing just fine.
Thank you.
I saw that there was a time in May, I guess, that you went to Oklahoma. Yeah. You didn't have enough of New York, so you had to go to Oklahoma. No, but the Oklahoma was, when Hurricane Sandy decimated your home and your district, Oklahoma were the first trucks that came in to try to help. So when the tornado decimated Oklahoma, you had New York trucks going to Oklahoma from your district. People who were still suffering in your district were putting food packets together to bring out to Oklahoma, and you addressed the Oklahoma State Legislature.
Almost 85% of the families that I represent were affected by Hurricane Sandy. I represent areas of southern Queens and Rockaway, so it's from Breezy Point to Bell Harbor and to Ponset, Far Rockaway. We have a small island in the middle of Jamaica Bay called Broad Channel, and then areas in Howard Beach and Ozone Park. And some slight damage to homes completely burned to the ground. And it was a very rough time. For me, being in the legislature for just a year when Sandy hit, there was no rule book, there was no manual. It was something that was, you just go out and do what you can. And your instinct and your human nature is you want to help everybody, but it's just not possible. So many people are struggling for the basic necessities: food, water, shelter. Families just didn't have a place to go, including my own. My own house saw about 5 feet of water, and my family was displaced for a number of months.
Did you rehab your home?
We did. We did. It took quite a number of months working with the insurance companies and with a lot of the local charity organizations. We were able to get the resources we needed to put our house back together.
Did your title help?
What's that?
Did your title help?
No, I like to think that I go through the struggles that everybody goes through. And what's interesting,
you felt their pain?
There's no question about it. And I often tell residents in the community that I'm very selfish. My goal is to solve whatever problem we're dealing with, not for everybody, but for my own family. And at the same time, if I'm able to help everybody, then that's the way it should be. But we work very hard, and no, like everybody else, we had, my house didn't get the power on any quicker than anybody else's. We didn't get the resources any quicker. But I think suffering through that together with everybody in my district, it sort of gave me a certain appreciation for the problems that people were going through. So when people complained about the insurance being too slow, I knew what that meant, because I saw how my wife, and God bless my wife, for dealing with a lot of the things in the house while I was running around the community. But I understood the struggles because I saw it firsthand. Talking about contractor fraud, I understand what contractor fraud was all about, because we had a lot of contractors come through our house and give us estimates and talk about the different ways to make money on the deal. So I experienced it all firsthand, and the mold. We gutted our house, I think it was day 8 when I first got back into my house, and I worked the best I could with volunteers to gut the house. It's actually a great story.
What type of home do you have?
I have a semi-attached single family, but it's a split level. So the first 2 levels saw significant flood damage. So the office and the den, and then the playroom and the toy room for the kids. So we suffered all in all about $70,000 to $75,000 worth of damage.
But it still wasn't safe for you to live on the 3rd floor.
No, we were out of the house. We were out of the house probably for a few months.
Tell me the great story.
So we were, it's funny, and I didn't want to take away resources from anybody else. There was so many people who had worse damage than I did, and I knew that my family was safe, and there was, we were okay for the time being. So we left my house the way it was for about 8 or 9 days. Finally, I said I kind of just needed the break. And when you need a break and you say to yourself, the best break you can think of is going to your own house to clean, it's kind of, you're in a sad state of affairs. So I started cleaning, but I didn't ask for any resources. I didn't ask for any help. And I'm literally cleaning and pulling memories out of our house and putting it on the front lawn. All the baby clothing that we had put in the garage. All just the... my office had all my campaign materials from my first campaign, right? Everything that you save, all those mementos, all those flyers, all those things that remind you of your first run for public office, and it was all destroyed, and I'm putting it all on my front lawn or putting it on the stoop. And as I'm pulling things out, people just start helping. People who I never met in my life. They just come into my house and they just start helping. Pull the carpet out, break up the couch and pull the couch out, pull the desk out, start ripping up the carpet, start breaking the walls. By the time we finished, and it was about 4 or 5 hours, there must have been 25 people helping in this process. And here's the best part of the story. I never met any one of them, and as we're finishing up, we get to outside, and everybody's tired, and everybody's spent. It was hard labor. And as we're sort of outside, just sort of looking at the pile that had accumulated from all the things that were in the house, a van pulls up and opens up the side door. And these were volunteers who came out to give coffee, cake, and soup to the volunteers. So it was volunteers who had come out to serve coffee, cake, tea, to help the volunteers. So it was just an amazing, amazing scene of families helping families, neighbors helping neighbors, strangers helping strangers. And as you mentioned earlier, when the tornadoes hit Oklahoma, and I was here in Albany, and I saw the devastation, I saw what families were going through, I immediately understood what the families were going through. And I jumped on the first flight I could get on, and then I went out to talk to my counterparts over there, the legislature over there, to talk about what I went through, some of the struggles we dealt with. How do you deal with FEMA? How do you deal with sort of big disasters? And I had the distinct pleasure of speaking to the entire legislature. And for a Democrat from New York to speak to a Republican majority legislature in Oklahoma and getting a standing ovation was very special to me.
Well, plus wearing a yarmulke, they probably haven't seen too many of those in Oklahoma City. But who was the rabbi or the person standing next to you?
Rabbi tremendous.
Rabbi Gold?
I think it's right, Goldman. He runs the Chabad of Oklahoma City. And
really?
Tremendous. What truly a tzaddik. Someone who, there's not a very big Orthodox community there.
Not at all.
I think there's a total of 5 or 6 people total, and they're all part of the Chabad family. Yeah. And they were the first on the ground. Doing what, again, your instinct is to want to help everybody, right? Small, you collectively, as you sort of build one good deed on top of another, and all of a sudden you realize you're having a real impact on people's lives. And as simple as just, sort of going up to someone and giving them a hug. And I'll tell you, when I got to Oklahoma and I had brought a few suitcases, whatever supplies I could fit in my suitcases, things that I collected from colleagues here in Albany. We ran around, we got whatever I can literally fit in my suitcases, and I was going to bring it to the Chabad house. And as I was driving, there was on the side of the road a tent set up to collect donations. And I pulled over just to say thank you, because I understood what it means to volunteer your time to collect donations for victims of for the tornado in Oklahoma. And I started telling them my story, and everybody just sort of kind of, broke out crying. It was one of those things where, hi, I'm from New York, and we're thinking about you.
Yeah.
We know what you're going through. I appreciate what you're doing, and it was a very emotional. And what was so funny was I kind of felt bad stopping at a volunteer drop-off site and not dropping anything off. So I went to my car, and the suitcase never actually made it to Chabad. I gave it to them right there. It made me feel so good to sort of be a part of that process, and it was very emotional. And I think if I like to think that I was able to help in a lot of ways, but if I would have turned around right then and there and got back on the plane, I think that I really had a significant impact on just those families, to let them know that I'm here, that the world is not going to forget about you, and that we're going to do everything we can to help. And that was really my message going to Oklahoma.
I think almost in every class is when I teach about Jewish things in Torah, I bring it out as why people have always the issue why bad things happen to good people. It always comes out to one way or another. Why does this person suffer? But really what you're answering is really one of the best answers. I mean, we don't know why it had to happen. That you don't say. But if it did happen, obviously you have to deal with the reality of the situation. Then that's the beauty of it. You don't want to wish it on anybody, God forbid. No one should know any troubles, that's for sure. But on the other hand, if it happens, you say, well, sometimes it brings out the best in people, and that's...
Sandy was a great disaster, but it was an opportunity to showcase the great kindness of the families in the community sticking together, the great kindness of people all across the country. As Mark mentioned, trucks from Oklahoma came to us in Rockaway, came to us in Howard Beach, and we were very happy in our little way to try and return that favor, and it was very emotional for me. And I know when I came back, a lot of families just appreciated the sentiment that on behalf of the people of New York that we were able to show that we're paying it forward and doing the best we can.
I don't want to minimize the tragedy that went on in Sandy, but Pete Lopez, the Assemblyman in the Republican side of the aisle, was from Schoharie County. He also had damage. His parents lost their home when Hurricane Irene and Lee. So maybe there's some commiserating that you could do and have a bipartisan collection to help.
Sadly, a lot of people who suffered through Sandy had already suffered through Hurricane Irene. I remember during my campaign, it was September of 2011, when Irene came rolling through and sort of also did a significant amount of damage to southern Queens and Rockaway.
Yeah.
So, we've seen now 200-year storms in the course of 2 years.
Yeah, but they're different areas. The governor keeps saying that, and I keep saying, but it's not in the same area. Well, you don't have 100-year storms in more than one in the same area.
Well, that's in southern Queens. We saw damage from both, even though it wasn't as extensive. We saw damage from both. So,
but he makes it seem like just because the storm was in Buffalo and it's a 100-year storm and it's in Queens, that New York had.
Right.
We fulfilled all our problems. But talk about that. Is there any talk about maybe they're prevented? I know that they were talking about it may cost $1 billion, or like a break front or into the ocean, or.
Yeah, every county and every region in the state is looking at different ways to mitigate future storm and protect their own neighborhoods and communities from future disasters. In New York City as its own entity is working on various mitigation plans. And almost every single day we're announcing different ideas and implementing different plans. And for example, Rockaway Beach, thanks to the help of Senator Schumer and the New York congressional delegation, we're able now to put close to 300 million cubic yards of sand onto the beach to rebuild the beach. When Sandy hit, part of the problem was that the beach had eroded over the years, and in certain areas there was almost no beach, 10 to 12 feet of beach. And when the Sandy came on, there was really no barrier between the community and the ocean. What this will do is we'll take a lot, we'll give you a significant amount of distance between the ocean and the community and offer a significant amount of protection. In addition, looking at ways to put in jetties and dunes, higher seawalls, higher bay walls, and to the more extreme, to build storm gates in certain areas. There's talk now of if you built a storm gate from the tip of Breezy Point to southern Brooklyn, you can protect and control the rising levels of water in Jamaica Bay. So there are small ideas and there are big ideas.
Well, there's money, I mean.
And
Yeah.
the federal government could do it all.
I wish. I mean, we hear these big numbers on the news, and everybody, pats themselves on the back. $60 billion for Sandy aid, right? But when it comes down to it, New York City thus far has only received 1.7 billion sort of in their hands. There's been promised now of another 1.3, so a total of $3 billion for New York City. But that's not nearly what New York City needs. So we hear about these big numbers, $60 billion, but New York City's only seen $3 billion thus far, and we're still working our way to make sure it's spent the right way.
There was another tragedy, 9/11, and there was, I just want to reminisce a little bit because Rabbi Simon was really, had a unique involvement with 9/11. You were 20 when September 11th happened in 2001.
Sure.
You were in college. But there was a gentleman who co-hosted the show, This Jewish View, with Rabbi Simon, Steve Lefkowitz. And he moved from Albany to start a life in Far Rockaway, and he had a wife and 2 kids?
Just
one kid, one child.
He was 5 years old.
And he was, 45, 50 years old, and then, he passed in 9/11. He was in the tower.
He worked for the state. So
And he worked for the state tax department.
Tax department.
So Rabbi Simon was officiated over the funeral, and they found
that was a miracle.
Yeah, why don't you tell them what they found?
I mean, because you're Jewish and and you're Orthodox, but really it's a problem for a wife to remarry. You can't say, well, come on, who's going to survive that? Must be her husband said. Well, if you don't have real proof according to Jewish law that you really can't remarry. And it was a miracle, as far as I'm concerned, because he was on the 86th floor, and that got hit straight. And really, people, there was no remains of people. And, of course, they were sifting through the remains as much as they could, and they did find his wallet. I mean, when that was what the rabbis said, well, no one just throws out their wallet,
And it was a pants pocket, wasn't he in the pants pocket?
Yeah, it was something, they had a little
with the
piece.
pocket.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we actually made a funeral, that's what I'm saying, there was a little piece, it's a little bit gory, but a little piece of his body, and we made a whole funeral because of that, so we just...
Look, we, in New York, and particularly in New York City, we're tested over and over again, and what makes New York City great is that we continue to get through it, and we get through it stronger and more resilient and more prepared. And I think that's so for 9/11. And I think it's so for post-Sandy that, again, you don't ever want to minimize the loss of life and the damage and the pain that people are going through. But it showed we sent a strong message to the world that you hit us with the worst, and we're gonna survive. We're gonna come back, and we're gonna be stronger than ever before. And then we're gonna try and help others, and that's the goal, and that's what I've tried to do.
Well, Steve's wife Sarah still lives on Beach 146th Street.
Yeah, and in Neponsit, very nice.
So
She's a teacher.
yeah.
Public school.
So if you get a chance,
To stop by and say hello.
you could send regards from Rabbi Simon and myself.
Will do.
So, what committees are you on in the assembly, and which ones did you want to be on that because you're a freshman you couldn't be on?
Gosh, that's a difficult question. I'm on 6 committees, and I always the challenge of getting them all off the top of my head. But economic development,
Right.
Aging, government employees.
It's odd, aging, you're so young.
I hear a lot. I tell you, I spend a lot of time visiting the senior centers, so I got a good grasp of things that are going on.
Yeah.
Corporations, racing and wagering, and of course the last one is and mental health.
Well, we were on. We had a freshman assemblyman on, and he said that he was given a list of ones that they couldn't be on: health, ways and means. What other ones that you couldn't be on that you were told that you couldn't
Look,
be
the
on?
truth is that I don't know what other people say. I think I got very lucky. I mean, for me, number one, I represent Southern Queens, which encompasses Aqueduct Racetrack, and that was the site of the first casino in New York City. So for me, racing and wagering was a priority because I wanted to have a say in not just in operations, but sort of the future of gaming in New York City.
But you couldn't get that.
Well, I did.
You did get that.
So I
You're
was,
on that.
and I'm on
Okay.
Racing and Wagering Committee. Government employees was something that was also very near and dear to me in that, sort of, I represent a very middle-class community, but mostly consistent of police officers, firefighters, teachers. So having government employees was important to me. So, everybody wants those committees. Ways and Means. You want to have a better say in the budget.
Right.
Education. Everybody wants to be in education, but
right.
I do think that there is something to be said for not getting on some of those committees right away. And I'll be very honest in that.
That's fine. I'm just curious, and I think the audience might be curious. Where's the pecking? Where are the higher committees that you have to be more senior to be on those committees? And it may be a valid reason why, but I'm just curious on a very basic level. Which one?
I could tell you this, and I put in my wish list, and I got almost everything that was on my wish list. I think.
But were you told? Don't put this, because you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
So which one, do you remember which ones you were told?
So I think it was health, education, and ways and means.
And higher ed? Or no?
No, higher ed. I mean, again, I didn't. I don't want to say I didn't have a desire to be on higher ed. It wasn't on my top of the list.
Right,
so I don't know.
Okay.
But I think, and even
so
now.
those are the three that you really are, that are the top echelon?
Yeah, and just so you know, I mean, what's interesting is that you watch some debates going on, particularly about education, right? Because education, you're always debating education policy, and I get some questions from constituents, and I realize how complicated education policy is. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a principal. I've never worked in a school, and I rely on people who are teachers and who are principals and who are administrators and educators, and I need to rely on them. And for me, I think if I were to ever be on the education committee, and it's something I might desire to be on one day, I think I'm going to need a few years to get to that point where I have enough knowledge and experience under my belt in dealing with these issues. And as a freshman member, and it's hard to say that. I mean, I think in the last few years there's been a lot of turnover in the assembly.
Yes.
I think.
So what number are you in the?
I don't know what the exact number is, but I think I've moved up about 30 spots.
30 spots.
In 2 years.
Yeah.
So not that I'm keeping any close track.
Well, you have to. I mean, your license plate might reflect that.
That's correct. So I'll tell you, I went from license plate number 162 to 129 in just a year. So who knows? But the truth is that
there are only 150 assemblymen. He had 162. So
nice pickup. The truth is that even the beauty of the system is that even freshman assembly members can have tremendous impacts, not only in our districts but up here in Albany. And I'm proud to be a part of a legislature that works. That we find ways to get things done, and it's not always pretty, and it's not always.
Well, it works when people aren't hauled out in handcuffs.
Yeah, look,
and there have been quite a few.
It's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate, and whether it's people who have worn wiretaps for multiple years on end, people who have fallen and ended up.
Well, I got to tell you, Gertie Lipschitz also fell on her own sword at the very end, and I don't know if it was after she left or if it was as she left, but she had some legal problems.
Let me tell you, in every profession there are bad actors. I don't have to tell you that.
Right,
and I'm sure there are some bad rabbis out there, and
journalists too.
Bad journalists. Not that I'm saying that,
no,
but in every profession there are bad apples, and you try not to let the few bad apples spoil the bunch.
That's
and the
true.
Truth is that regardless of all the scandals that we have seen, I don't think it's impacted the quality work that we've gotten done.
I've worked behind the scenes in the Assembly and in the Senate, and I can tell you that for the most part, that you have 99% working above and above board, and they're not looking to make a quick buck.
We work hard night and day, and I take this for myself. Look, I have to go home every night, when I go home, when I'm not stuck in Albany, I have to go home every night and I have to look my kids in the eye and I have to put them to bed and say that I did something good that day.
What's your challenge eating-wise and lifestyle-wise in Albany here when you come up? Do you bring your lunches?
Well, I was going to ask that too, but just have to tell the viewers he's an Orthodox Jew.
Right, observant Jew, yeah.
All right, we haven't said that yet, but I'm observant Jew from New York City. So how many are there? Maybe you have a group there?
I think there's
not a caucus?
No, not quite yet. We're working our way there. We're halfway there. There's five Orthodox Jews in the Assembly. I mean, the Speaker Silver, Dov Heikind, Mike Simanowitz, David Weprin,
and yourself,
and me. So there's five of us, halfway to a minion, and it's a constant struggle.
The Senate has Simcha Felder.
And the Senate is Simcha Felder,
Brooklyn,
right? That's correct. He was just elected last year, and it's a constant struggle. There is a daily minion if you wake up early enough to get there. I think it's 6:40 every morning at in the shul. The Chabad, I think there's a minyan a little later.
Yeah.
At 8, but Beth Abraham Jacob has the 6:40
6:40.
minyan.
Yeah, 6:40 in the morning, and it's a struggle. Look, it's a struggle because the schedule. People. It's funny when I'm in Albany. My district is Phil's on vacation in Albany, and when I'm in the district, everybody in Albany says, enjoy your vacation when you go back to the district. So they keep us pretty busy here. I mean, we're in session 6 months out of the year, and there's a lot to do.
Well, what do you do here in Albany in terms of your lifestyle and maintaining that? Do you bring food with you? What are your challenges?
It's a combination of all. It's tough. I have 2 kids at home that are very demanding. When I leave the house, whether it's Sunday night or early Monday morning, it's usually in the midst of my son screaming, my daughter either getting ready for school or preparing for the next day, and I leave the house and I do the best I can to remember bringing my pants, let alone trying to remember to pack a sandwich. So it's hard. I was here today. I got here early this morning. I was in the Capitol, and at this event there was lunch, and I was with a colleague of mine from Utica, a close friend of mine. His name is Anthony Brindisi from Utica. And he commented how I eat like a camel. I've got to eat a lot when the food is in front of me so I can last for a longer. So I sat down to lunch today, and he was ribbing me on the amount of food that I ate, only because I didn't know when my next meal was going to be. It's not a healthy lifestyle, and I don't recommend it for anybody. But the truth is that most days when I'm here,
how could Albany be more accommodating to the legislators' needs who are observant Jews?
Well, currently, there's no access to kosher food anywhere within miles of the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
In the Capitol, there's no access to kosher food. None of the restaurants serve any kind of kosher food. You live off of, sadly, and again, it's not the healthiest way to living, but you live off of chocolate bars and candy and pretzels and whatever snacks you can get a hold of, whether it's Entenmann's Donuts or things like that. All my committees, and I'm very proud to say that all my committees that serve food are now serving a kosher alternative as well.
Really?
As a matter of fact, government employees, which was the chairman is Peter Abadi from Brooklyn, who understands kosher very well. His staff commented to me today that they're already stocking up on their Entenmann's to make sure that I can partake as well. So whereas it used to be, whether it was cheese cubes or other things that aren't particularly kosher, now they're paying particular attention. It's not easy.
What does the speaker do in the members' lounge that only you have access to? I mean, you have bananas and oranges and apples, but what else do you do? What else does he do to help accommodate and make that easy, not just for him, but for you also?
I think most food, and not whether it's, and I appreciate the speaker doing this, but most food in the lounge is actually kosher. And it's mainstream food that also happens to be kosher, mm-hmm. which is great. So, the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I don't want anybody to think that there's this glorified lounge. It's stale pretzels and salad and some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But look, when you're hungry and you're in Albany and you're in session until 2, 3, 4 in the morning sometimes, you rely on these things. But the speakers...
They keep me out of the lounge, so I thought there was something special there.
Trust me, I will bring you in when we start session. But the speaker and his staff are very, very accommodating to our needs. So when we're here late and they're ordering food for the legislature, they'll go in special and order food. There is a kosher deli at the Price Chopper. It's about a 20-minute drive from here. So if I ever find myself and I'm really hungry and it's been a couple days, then I'll take the ride out. But it's hard. So I do the best I can to prepare and bring food from home, but it's hard. I like to think that when I come to, they call it the freshman 20, but I think I should call it the observant Jew 20. Every time you're in Albany, you gain 20 pounds. So I find myself gaining weight when I'm in Albany, and then I try as hard as I can to lose it when I'm home, only so I can come back and do it all over again. And always, and I invite anybody who's visiting Albany to come by my office. I have a fully stocked office of
kosher food.
Kosher food, but nothing healthy. I warn you in advance. It's not that much healthy food, but there's always something to eat. So feel free to stop by my office.
I'm going to see you more often then.
And I have a kosher microwave and toaster oven. So feel free to come on by. But look. I always like to say that God doesn't put before you a challenge that you can't overcome. And being in the assembly allows me to do a tremendous amount of public service, and it allows me to sanctify God's name on a daily basis. And at the same time, there are challenges, and I work with my colleagues to overcome them. They personal challenges and professional challenges, and I work every day to overcome them.
And you don't have one bag under your eyes, so you're doing great. You're doing great. So I wish you so much more success, and it's so good to consider you a friend, and
thank you.
I'm so proud of that. So, you know, many more good years of success, health, and happiness.
Amen. Thank you very, very much. It's truly an honor to be here with you.
And you should grow and have a minion, a full 10 people, so you don't have to run the show. You can just make it right to the temple right there. So wish you the best of success. And you really are a sanctification of Hashem's game, of God's name, because you not only are a good Jewish person, an Orthodox Jewish person, working in society and keeping up the morals and ethics that the Jewish religion really teaches.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.